lends itself into the belief, and I might be ascribing motivations here. It lends itself into the belief that American foreign policy is being directed by Israel, that we're too close to Israel, even though we've been giving money, the federal government's been giving people's tax money to the Palestinians, to the Lebanese, to Egyptians, to everybody down there. The further we get involved down there, and now it looks like we're going to become, the federal government's going to become more involved in Afghanistan and Pakistan, the more dangerous the situation will become for Americans at home, because that resentment grows, it's fostered, it festers, and you can't avoid problems when you go and intervene in other people's yards.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the Founding Fathers were very wise to advocate a policy of non-intervention in foreign affairs. A lot of people, of course, especially the conservative movement, the mainstream conservatives, have accused libertarians, people like Ron Paul, of being isolationists, and that's the exact opposite of his stance. We should isolate the government, because when we don't, we become isolated.
Yeah.
People become isolated from one another. We can be pretty much friends with almost everyone through trade. I mean, it's like Bastiat said, when goods don't cross borders, armies will.
Oh,
and that's why, folks, America and China aren't going to go to war anytime soon, that I can see, is because we're dependent on one another for trade, and that's a really good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, the very existence of currency markets shows that free market economics is a great salve for differences between cultures. That trying to do better for your life and opening up markets to help you do better is a great way to bring people closer together. And unfortunately, you don't create free markets through military conquest.
Right. And political intrigue, which we see all over the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also, I'm like you, Gard. I don't mean especially to make light of situations that we've been talking about, but they do share some things in common with this homegrown terrorism thing, and some of the stuff that Congress has proposed. I think it was House Resolution 1955, which I'm not sure that passed or not, and I forget the sponsor. But in any case, which was draconian and was a mind crime bill to some extent.
Yeah,
and it's just alarming to see these cases come more and more and more prominent and more numerous, and for all of them to share the characteristic of all of them have someone on the inside, a government official, directing things.
Well, you and I discussed this a little bit about, what was it, a couple months ago, Glenn, where we said, as far as our movement is concerned, and the freedom-loving people, the peace-loving people who are out there who want to stop government coercion of their neighbors, those people are going to have to be careful too, because there are some instances, for example, folks whose issues are drug legalization and decriminalization. They could get infiltrated.
And what I really worry about isn't even the government trying to infiltrate our group, but if there is a loose cannon that has somehow gotten to our group, and that becoming an impetus for a big investigation and a bunch of people getting arrested, even though they have nothing to do with this person.
Yeah, boy, that's very, very worrisome.
Yeah, and that's what I'm really worried about, is that because we don't know everybody that we associate with, and you may think that some guy's a really good guy, and turns out that he's not, and you don't have anything to do with him, but he attended one of a meeting that you were at or something like that, and then all of a sudden everybody is under suspicion. That's a very dangerous place to be in the current political environment.
Well, I give you a quick example. I know you and I were talking a little bit before we started recording about Ernie Hancock's Freedom's Phoenix, and he has a great report out there about the guys from Motorhome Diaries and the situation that they ran into being pulled over in Mississippi, and they have this report where the boys got their video camera back where they were videotaping the police officers who pulled them over. It was a dry county, so they arrested one of them for having an open container in the mobile home. He wasn't driving. He was just sitting there with an open container. They arrested another one, Jason, for some sort of activities that they didn't like, not responding to a police officer, that sort of thing. And the guys finally got their video camera back, and the cops erased the portion of the video up until the point where they're being arrested. So no one can actually find out what the heck happened, except, the cops will have their story in court, and the judge will probably believe the cops. But what's fascinating is in the story it was reported that one of the deputies who came up after the first two police officers who were talking to them more reasonably, this guy was very agitated, and he noticed some of the bumper stickers that were on the back of the van. And they're very pro-freedom bumper stickers. And he said, "Oh, I know what you're all about." And that just set the guy off, those bumper stickers. So, it's going to be a tricky time for us. And I think, all we can do is, people pick and choose their battles. I happen to be interested in the intellectual battle and the creative side of things. And some people want to go out there and protest and, be involved with meetings and things like that. And, more power to them. Watch out, though, guys.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, have you talked about the MEAC report on the Liberty Conspiracy?
Is that? Yeah, that's the one where they told the police officers to watch out for anybody who has a Ron Paul sticker.
Supporters and constitutionalists and people that talk about the Constitution. And
yeah.
Anti-abortion groups and gun rights activists.
Yes.
And this all plays into the same theme.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. It does seem to play into it. Yeah. They're trying to raise the alarm to the police officers, and they're drawing all these people in with a very broad brush. Painting people who support Ron Paul as white supremacists. I mean, it's just absolutely insane.
Yeah. It's ludicrous.
Yeah.
But as you say, I mean, people should proceed with caution. And especially with what we were talking about in the last segment, economically, with what we think is going to happen, frankly, we're going to be the scapegoats, I believe. And people that believe in free markets and believe in economic freedom, we're going to get blamed for a lot of this. And it won't be our fault, of course, because we're the ones that have been arguing against it. By the same token, the government, the politicians will need a scapegoat to blame things on.
Wow.
Also, unfortunately, people that have a little bit of money, I can see a class warfare thing taking place.
Yeah.
We're already seeing that take place to some extent. So, just a word of caution, if you will.
Well said, Glenn. It reminds me of the story that I read in Jim Powell's book. He had a historical overview of freedom and different figures in the freedom movement over centuries. And he had a really neat story in there about Thomas Paine, who was really ahead of his time. And he had some wonderful quotes. I think I read one of them in one of my prior podcasts. And it was basically an anarcho-capitalist, pro-free market statement that he had inside the rights of man. And Thomas Paine, after the American Revolution, Jim Powell wrote that he went to England. And he was almost busted in England, and he escaped basically by about 20 minutes from the royal authorities, and he went to France. And he was in France during the French Revolution, and he was arrested.
Right.
And he was thrown into the Bastille, and the only reason he survived, they had called his name to behead him, but the man who went in to go get the prisoner and pull him out went to the wrong cell. Sort of like a Life of Brian sort of thing. Luis Brian, I'm Brian. They went to the wrong cell and pulled somebody else out and beheaded him. And so Paine was there for one more day, and then something happened and everything changed and the Bastille was opened and he was released. and he ended up living back in the United States. But this is the sort of thing that some of these guys had to go through. John Locke, he had to go to Holland for a while because of the whole problem with the Catholics and the Protestants and so on. And so, you know, people will obviously have to be very careful about what they're doing, but I hope it won't deter them. Sometimes these risks have to be taken on, and I think one of the key things is to make sure you're in touch with local media outlets. Make sure you make friends with these people, whatever your movement might be. And that way, if something does happen, you've got somebody on your side in the local movement, a local television station, local radio station, things like that, and people will know that you're not inclined to do this. It's going to be really, really tricky.
Well, you know, Gard, though, everything has changed. President Obama changed everything. It's hope and change. But then we find, not so much. From the New York Times, Obama is said to consider preventative detention plan.
Oh, man. Hit me, man. What's up with